see consciousness as great as today. Today, when I look around in the world, what do I see? I see footprints that man have left on the sand while walking through time. I see fruits of our ambition, figment of our imagination, and I ask myself, when will it end? When will it end? It is plain to see, universally this land is not bountiful as it was, simply because in its quest for success, nothing stands in man's way. All rivers run dry, soon the birds will fly, the mountains will be no longer high. And when I really think of it, I just wonder why, oh why. I see charity deplored, equal rights totally ignored, wisdom and ingenuity working in accord, simply to afford such inventions as thermonuclear warfare and environmental warfare. And I wonder now, where do we go from here? Prophets everywhere gaze upon the horizon and declare that judgment will come as the savage hands of unscrupulous men defile everything passed by.
Yes indeed, of course. A pleasant good night to all and sundry, east, west, north, south, central in Trinidad, our friends in Tobago, and wherever you are, streaming on the World Wide Web. A pleasant good day to you. This is Yesterday. Let me make sure, yesterday, Wednesday night edition of the Corridor Transformation, your host, Lennox Smith. Of course, you would have been anxiously awaiting the inaugural edition of the Young People's Corner around 5:15 or 5:30 today. Well, we want to say that we push it back to Monday. Monday we will start that. Of course, Joshua will be the host of that particular session. He will have his friends. I saw his friends today, and you know they had a discussion and all of that, planning what they would want to do. And I want to say I am very impressed. But of course, I could be biased because I mean, let's face it, I have reasons to be biased. But you will determine on Monday whether or not the initiative is worth, of course, continuing or worth having been contemplated upon and introduced on the Corridor Transformation. But in the meantime, let's ask the question, what is progress and why? Let's play it again. We need to understand the concept of progress. Last night, of course, we looked at the whole question of the reason on a sustained basis how we can address the burgeoning difficulties associated with crime and criminality in particular, but social, economic, psychological, and cultural deterioration or retrogression, and therefore the whole question of Trinidad and Tobago as a community as a whole, and the consequential impression that strangers will have about us, and the fact that we are not in a good place having regard to our crime and criminality and the situation with our young people and opportunities. Mind you, tomorrow, and I want to say in advance congratulations to all of the 19,000 young people that will be sitting or taking the C exam, secondary entrance examination. I want to say I hope that what you would have worked for, or put another way, that which you had targeted in terms of the accomplishment and where you should be in terms of the marking system, that you achieve same. But if that is not so, don't be despaired. I see the opposition today calling a press conference on the cusp or on the penultimate day before that election and that examination, and the former Minister of Education, a woman calling herself Dolly, Gaspy Dolly. I was aghast as to the nonsense that would be spewed at this stage of the game, talking about the psychological pressures on the examinees and the teachers and parents, etc., to bring this particular exam to fruition. I say that the statement in general, and I'm not going to belabor it in any elaborate way, only to say that it is a case once again of the PNM myopia, their short-sightedness, and don't understand that mediocrity is not an acceptable form of advancement for individuals, institutions, and the country as a whole. We are in competition as a country with other countries for, let's say, US dollars. We are in competition inside of the country as far as businesses is concerned, and you go to any one of the eateries or one of the malls that have a common space for those persons who are engaged in the production of or producing of some of the delicacies or the culinary delights that we feast upon on a daily basis, and you will see competition. Understand that. Because competition means that the best will come to the fore, and those who have not been able to come up to par, fortunately, there are opportunities one expects that will provide those persons to do some introspection, retrospection, and come again in order to get to the top. And in that scenario, competition produces the best. I was appalled. I was incensed to see that big people don't understand that in the opposition and will come to look for sympathy for the introduction of mediocrity that will never put Trinidad and Tobago in the place where it ought to be. And of course, the classic example, whilst they were in government, in my view, 400 national scholarships, open scholarships. That is competition. That is competition. You want the best. You want them to do the best. You want them to make certain that they make Trinidad and Tobago proud, their families and themselves proud. So what you do, you reduce it to 100 open scholarships, and then you place the 300 in a ministry, so that the ministry, with a government like the PNM in office, can select their political attachments or their sycophants and their political considerates in order to give them the bursaries or the scholarships to further wreak havoc on the various institutions which we spoke of last night and on the ground report today and the day before, thus institutionalizing, making it normative, the deterioration or the destruction or the mediocrity or the dysfunctionality of the various institutions, not only of social control, but the various facilitatory mechanism that is facilitated by the government and indeed would have repercussions for private sector as well, because we have seen the PNM engage in what I consider to be the utilization of the state resources because the state doesn't have to really work. They just have to impose taxes on the rest of us in order to get money and then say they distribute it well. We have seen a situation where mediocrity by way of the facilitation of the state under the PNM was rampant. State land given to what Dr. Rowley called one-percenters. Why is the ordinary person, whether you are from Laventille, Beetham, and so on, because you are not that connected, will never get a piece of state land, prime state land, take the same state land and go to the bank, mortgage it, and build a big mall or some enterprise, and then say that these people are successful businessmen. I say that is artificial. I say that is loading the dice, so to speak. In other words, it's an unfair system to give an unfair advantage to persons who are or were politically aligned, and only because of that they get that and then claim that they are successful businessmen. Why am I making this point? I am making this point because the classic example is the Warners, who today are before the courts for 16 money laundering charges. A business entity under the same name, Warner, that Dr. Rowley came up at the Success Laventille Secondary School and told Laventillians and the young people from Sealands, Beetham, East Port of Spain that were assembled and listening to him, using the Warners as the classic example of an African man that has made it and therefore defending his right to not only come from Tobago and venture in and expand his business into Trinidad. Nobody would deny that. It's Trinidad and Tobago. So vice versa, somebody from Trinidad going to Tobago, and I know of some who have gone to Tobago and developed their own businesses. The big difference is this, that the Warners have been facilitated by friends. Dr. Rowley saying that he was one of the founding organizers, or should I say owners, of the Warners, the Warner business in its different, what I consider to be iteration or forms. And then get, of course, government assistance, whether it be land, whether it be port. And then Dr. Rowley comes into Laventille and tell Laventille people, be like that. as if we are stupid. Because if you want the Lavatil people to be like that, then give them the facilitation that you would have given one or two, and see if all of us wouldn't become rich as well. The problem here is that if you can't use those opportunities to have a sustained business, to have a longevity that will give credence to utilizing to the optimum the unfair advantage that you built in or you provided, then haul your tail, Rowley and the PNM. How the hell you could use that as an example? And if they're not, of course, being charged for illegal quarrying, they're now being charged, of course, for money laundering. How that is an example, Rowley? And all of Rowley and the PNM examples always turn to dust, always turn to a puff, always turn to an exercise in futility. Let us take, of course, Naikwan, for example. Oh, according to Rowley, and always before the disaster comes, is the only gas to liquid for clean fuel in the Western Hemisphere. Yes, he went that far, the Western Hemisphere. Naikwan are talking about. And when we looked at it, the owners of Naikwan, intrinsically connected to the PNM, they were provided with gas. When other companies that are of a private nature but not connected to the PNM, obviously, such as, of course, the 12 or 11 companies that had to leave Trinidad and Tobago from Point Lisa and shut down their businesses. Yeah, because they weren't connected. You had the Iron and Steel Company, for example, when, of course, the issue of not being able to be sufficiently viable and the returns to their investors or their owners was not acceptable. They threatened, of course, to lay off. And with some kind of cock and bull story, or put another way, a kind of inertia, a kind of inaction, saying that the Minister of Labor then, are talking about ugly Jennifer Batiste. Yes, she came as Minister of Labor at the time and said, well, all right, I didn't act. I remain unmoved. I didn't do my job. But however, those persons who may be displaced from the closure of that steel mill will find work for you in other countries where they can drive these heavy vehicles. And that was one promise that never materialized. We don't know where these skilled people are, because that is a specialized area, the production of steel. But that was closed down, in other words. ISPAT, it was called. I think it might have evolved into a different name, but it doesn't matter. The fact is, it was the Iron and Steel Company. And of course, you have several others, as I say, some 11 of them. While on the other hand, Naikwan was not only given special gas arrangement through the minister, then are talking about Stuart Young of Energy. The eventual state bank, Republic Bank, invested over $100 million in that venture. And we could safely say that ill-fated venture. Yeah. And Rowley went, of course, and he cut the ribbon, not for the first time. because he also cut the ribbon for the re-inauguration. First for fella I know only cutting ribbon for something that was already open. So he cut ribbon for the extension of the highway to Point Fortin, and guess what? A piece of it fell into the swamp below. A piece of the highway fell into the swamp below. After that, of course, it acquired the appellation or the name, the Mosquito Crack, rather than the Mosquito Creek. Mosquito Crack, I say the Mosquito Crack Up. Because if you go there now, you will see, of course, the challenge for engineers and other civil engineering experts to redesign and to get that functioning. But the point I am making is that we only went and cut the ribbon for Daikwan and boasted it's the only thing in the Western Hemisphere. That's a major claim, you know, people. You talking about nobody else has that. Whether you're from Canada, whether United States, and any one of the Central American countries, and the South American countries, whether it be Brazil, whether it be Argentina, whether it be Chile, whether it be Peru, whether it be Bolivia, whether it be Paraguay, Uruguay, and on the central part of the Americas, whether it be Panama, whether it be Nicaragua, whether it be Honduras, whether it be El Salvador, whether it be Mexico. Yes, that is the boss that he was speaking of. And guess what? As it became stereotypical, 3 to 4 weeks after the cutting of that ribbon and that boast, Daikwan blew up. And don't get me vexed before I play it for you now tonight, you know. Don't get me vexed. You see, I am making the connection between the mamagai of the African community that mainly dominates the east-west corridor, and with a higher degree of specificity, talking about the Laventils, the Beetham, the Sealats, Shumakak, Africa, Belmont, East Port of Spain. We have to understand what we are up against. And it's not that the same resources couldn't satisfy, even if it's one or two selected persons out of Beetham, Laventil, Sealats, East Port of Spain, and to make them a millionaire too. And with the right training, and with one would expect that the selected person would have a conscience like me. Because I say very, very, very often, as I'm saying tonight, if I had the chance, I empty the treasury of Trinidad and Tobago in Laventil. And here it is, probably comes up there. Comes up the Laventil at the Success School. Getting back, of course, to my original statement about the example of the Warners. I'd say that they are successful businessmen only to the extent that the PNM is in government, and only to the extent that Rowley and they recognize them. It's not that they recognize Rowley, no. Rowley and them have to recognize you, and that is how you get an advantage. It's the same damn thing with respect to, and I'm not talking here in a vacuum, you know. I am not making any conjecture, you know, or guessing, you know. Because one of the members of the 1%ers, a very prominent businessman in Port of Spain, Gregory Aboud, he said in no uncertain terms, when the issue of the 1% came up, and Rowley, of course, went on television and said that he wants people to be rich and so on, But only when the scrums fall off the table, then others will come up. But he preferred to have created millionaires, and therefore the concept of the 1% started to take root. But Gregory Aboud said, I cannot countenance that I and my family could be considered to be a 1%. However, his following statement not only ratified the existence of a 1%, but he characterized what a 1% is in the context of the discussion that we are talking or engaging now. He said in no uncertain terms, if you want to see a 1%, look at the extent to which their business depend on government contracts. That is profound. If you want to see a 1%, look at the extent to which the business is dependent on government contract. And of course, what comes immediately to mind is justice on time. Justice on time, I think, is a classic exemplification where the entire prisoner delivery system in terms of transportation is organized by Amalgamated, and the owners of that therefore, according to Gregory Aboud, clearly is a 1%er because a large proportion of the business of that company, Amalgamated Security, depends on government contract. You see them, you see them in the hospitals, in the prison system, in the justice system. They are so ubiquitous, they are so omnipresent that it will be very difficult for anybody, of course, to not notice. All right, I understand that people are saying that volume is a bit low. All right, let me just. All right, thank you very much. I'm getting, you see, we have an internal tracking system, so they said that they're hearing the volume a bit low, so I have adjusted. Let me see if that is the case. But let's go straight to the line. Just as yesterday, we have the same system that we will adopt. A pleasant good night to welcome to the corridor.
And same to you and all your listeners.
Yes, man.
Lennox, today I enjoyed the GLSE or PSC Accounts Committee on Pharmaceutical. What I have seen today is a way and a methodology to show how these civil servants and the disciples of the PNM, how incompetent they are. And the ministry technocrats and the senior officers of the ministry was left wanting. The Speaker of the House and the chairman of this committee really delve into the inefficiencies and the incompetency of a lot of these people. So to move them now is an easy task because it has been laid bare into the public domain what the CMO, the chief inspector, all those people responsible for giving selective people permission to bring in drugs that was not vetted properly, and the loopholes and the alleged, from my vantage, collusion of these people. I think I am waiting to see the petroleum company, Petrotin, before a select committee to investigate. I'm waiting to see Caribbean Airlines. All of these companies that has been wasting our money. Even Flipdeco, the Port Authority, basically to identify. So it is a totally different approach, or an approach based on now experience they had before and the experience they gained and the protocols they have developed from watching what the PNM had, well, not had, did, and abused taxpayers funded. And I am expecting to see a lot of similar type civil case against board, a lot of these boards, because it shows that the PNM appointed people who, like a former police commissioner said, he don't take instruction, he only take advice because he doesn't know what to do. And that came out vividly. So I am really happy. It takes 11 months, but people have to bear with it. We cannot fix 10 years of malpractice. I have to use malpractice that Rowley and his band of incompetent ministers, for Terence Crybaby, they are saying, have to come before the committee. And according to Ian Allen, I believe they're going to wet him, and you're going to wet him, and he might end up crying. I go and have a nice night.
Thank you. But now say a little second. Are you
Okay.
the theme tonight, of course, is looking at the whole question of the development, but I also made reference to the 1%ers. Did that in your view exercise brought out clearly the nature of the PNM in terms of promoting by use of state resources a certain group of persons who, of course, have now been given the name or the appellation 1%? Did you get that from that observation that you would have made?
You hit the head on the nail.
All right.
These people didn't have no land. They got land easily, leases. They went to the bank. They borrowed on it, and they end up, so it's like setting up a company from nowhere and getting a contract.
Yeah, I mean, and becoming a millionaire overnight.
That is exactly what you want. The man say you want to make the rich get richer.
Yeah, you see, I listen to me, please. I would have had no problem if you would have gone into Laventille and these other depressed communities and make millionaires of a couple of the people there. But of course, I would have insisted, and I would have read the RAT Act to make sure that in exchange for that you develop that place, that you take charge of that place, that you generate the employment opportunities, the educational opportunities, so that these people can not just compete but can make their contribution solidly to national development. But you focus on people who already would have had, and then you give them more on top of more by facilitating them through state assets and or resources. That is despicable. That is treason, in my view. What's your view?
And look at this. And you provide a conveyor belt for these people to get employed low wages. And case in point, when CPEP and URP established themselves, right, was a lot of money was funded, right? And these people, when they got paid, where they went? They went to these cloth stores. They went to these to buy boots, 600, 800. And the little money they get, they spend it in various clothing that the 1% owned. So they were getting the clients, they were getting the land, they were getting capital at very, very low interest rate.
And a captive customer base.
Right.
A captive consumer base.
And let me
to
add
facilitate those businesses. Go ahead.
The only black man who developed a business from scratch, they lick it up for the 1%. That is Colonial Life Company. The only
Magnificent.
black man,
Yes.
Uncle Dupree.
And I will, to a lesser degree, make reference to McLeod as well. I think he's a self-made, he went through the mills and so on. I don't think, in fact, he ended up, of course, a very disappointed man because he didn't get the kind of opportunities that being politically aligned as his compatriots would have gotten in the business sector. So I want to also recognize him as well as a self-made. But you're quite right. Yeah? McLeod.
From where?
He owns that building on Duke Street that houses the Ministry of Labor. The man who I think you'll know him for better fact. The man who invented the soca competition and gave it up.
Okay. Is McCall the name? Is not McCall?
Is what?
I forget the name. I know you're talking about
Spectacular, yes, I know of spectacular fame, yes.
Right, yeah, I know, but I never identify him as McCall.
Okay.
The name in the back of my head. I know the gentleman.
All right, well, call in and tell me. I might be wrong, but that's the name that came to me immediately.
He was instrumental with the Black Orcas that
That's right. So he was focused there. Even though, of course, they used to call him the black Monroe, yes, the black Syrian. Yeah. Monroe is the man, yeah. But there was a McLeod as well that had a similar, let's say, trend. Yes. But you're right, yes, Monroe, and not McLeod. So my apology, and of course, thank you for the correction.
And there was another one, Umbala.
Umbala, yes, but all of whom, waned at the end of the day because they were not sustained by.
Umbala was a true Oreo.
Yes.
He decided to go up and live just like Rowley.
Yeah, and he has some buildings in Belmont and so on that is still lying there fallow. I don't know what has happened with it, but I'll see what's up. But I gotta go because the next call coming in.
All right.
Thanks. Yes. All right, people. Let's go. We have another call. Professor, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Yeah, Lennox, I ain't stay long time there.
Hey, you're good, man.
William Monroe. I think it's William Monroe you're talking about.
Yeah, William Monroe, yes. The caller corrected me. But we also had McLeod as well, who was a self-made African, businessman who, in my view, also fell by the wayside. And of course, we have Monroe quarreling these days that he was not given the same facility as his more fair-skinned counterparts.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But thanks very much for that intervention as well. Well, tell me what you want to make a contribution one time, now, man.
Yeah. No. Well, yeah. Well, what I saying is that we need to concentrate on developing the place, the East-West corridor, right?
That's
because
right.
The government making the right move is just that we need to work together with them.
That's right.
And you have to understand that the PNM could only criticize and demonize,
Yes.
We know what they did to the NAR when the NAR was in office.
That's right. Yeah, we will come to that in due course. Because we have to go nostalgic in order to understand the beast that we are dealing with, and it must never raise its head again. But the destiny must be the dustbin of political history. Go ahead.
Yeah. So now I was saying that they never really, in no meaningful way, concentrate on developing our people.
That's right.
Especially economically.
And that is the essence of the discussion. And where, because it would have been artificial, unfortunately, those who would have gotten the opportunity, because they felt that the PNM will always be there, they flounder. And I was making the point about the 16 charges of the Warners from Tobago that Rowley praised as a successful business man and the entities that he would have developed as businesses. And we have seen, of course, a total nosedive at this point in time.
Yeah.
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 So basically, that's what it is. So, but I need to see her. We need to talk. Safa asked me what's to contact you concerning, you know what it is,
Yes,
right?
yes. But I didn't get her.
So,
The person was supposed to meet me at TTT. And we probably lost communication. But the wisest thing to do,
Safa said she came.
well, the wisest thing to do would have been to wait there, because I must come outside and I'll ask her. All right, I'll make some arrangement with the security. All right.
Yeah, make some arrangement and you can call me and I will.
Okay, and convey. I'll probably call you tonight.
All right.
Yeah, because I'm finishing 9:30.
Okay, no
Yeah.
problem. So after your program, I'll call you and we can talk.
Yeah,
about it.
yeah. Okay, thanks. No problem.
All right, man.
Yes.
Yeah, man, thanks. Okay.
Yes, people. See, so the whole idea is opportunity. And I would not have mind if you are giving one group the opportunity, the facilitation of the state assets, so that they can capitalize upon that in order to realize their business acumen and the consequence of being in business, because you're in business to make profit. The factors of production from any rudimentary level of economics, rudimentary level, factors of production, land. Let me see, make sure you see my finger there. Land, labor, entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur is the businessman who have the business idea. But you have another factor, capital. So land, labor, capital, money, that's where the banks come in making the investment, and entrepreneurship. And when the most difficult, you can have all the ideas in the world. You can have the best idea in the world. And of the remaining three, as an entrepreneur, to facilitate the factors of production is that of capital. We have seen that, money. But if you have land, those who are to facilitate or to provide the capital have no difficulty, by and large, to hold the land in exchange for providing the capital, where you can, of course, deploy it for construction, for purchase of raw material, or for the purchase of items, for the communication of those things that you have for sale, whether it be tangible or it be a service. Capital will make things right. But if you have land, as I said, like how the government provided the 1%ers with land, state land, and they could use it to mortgage or to hold it as collateral for the capital, because once you have money in your hand, you can use it for any other things, including building generating the infrastructure and the superstructure, and of course recurring expenditure and the satisfaction of fixed and mobile or movable assets. Yeah. Because fixed asset will, of course, fixed circulating assets will be things like electricity. That's a fixed thing, but of course it varies from time to time, water and so on. Also have to, of course, to provide for your employees to pay. So that's a charge on the business. That's expenditure. And the land, at least the government of Rowley and they understood that, but never considered providing similar facility. And God knows the truth, that there are extremely ambitious persons among Laventille, East Port of Spain, Mova, too, but they never consider them. And those that are of the 1% ilk, characteristic, they assemble in a different place. You see them in the Westmorelands. Yes. And places of what is called well-to-do communities, where the rich and the accomplished reside. So you know, so they are not looking at Laventille and Beetham and so on. They are looking west rather than east. However, and that is the irony, that is the inconsistency, that for them to get into office, they rely on these same people in the east. And when they get there, they then facilitate those in the west in providing the largest of the state to them, claiming that, of course, it's a cabinet decision and all the what I consider to be misfeasance decision. You have malfeasance and misfeasance. And maybe it might be useful to make the distinction, because there are people who may not understand the difference between malfeasance and misfeasance. Malfeasance when, of course, you do something that is totally wrong. Misfeasance is a situation where you have the right to do something, but you do it skewed, you do it illegally. And in such circumstance, hardly anybody could touch you, because you have a right, you have the authority by law and otherwise to function in that capacity. Whereas misfeasance, if you thief something directly and so on, well, you have problems. But certainly misfeasance is what the PNM knows well. It's what they do. That's what they did. And they cannot now, as they have done in the press conference today, try to absolve themselves. The population have decided. Of course, politics is one where there is a cycle, and they understand that too, and therefore they will, in opposition, project that their self-righteous indignation, disposition, and the love for the community, and those that are downtrodden, you hear them regurgitating a skewed or specious or questionable love for URP workers and CPEP workers, and those, of course, in the forestry program and all of that. But while they had the opportunity, they never made 1 million. However, they themselves, when you examine them, you see that not only have they created a private sector 1%, but they themselves use the state resources and the largest and the opportunities that the position in government provides them in order to reach close to, if not to join, if not to enjoin, I should say, like a Siamese twin, the 1%. Why am I saying that? What is the proof? What is the proof? Yeah. What is the proof? The proof is this. There are many more, or many others, but the proof is this. Classic. Apart from the fact that Dr. Rowley came out of retirement and tell us that and defend the existence of Balize House and the construction thereof without bringing a piece of paper to show a paper trail. They have gone mad, you know. Somebody accused you, the Prime Minister accused Balize House of being constructed via, of course, illicit means or illicit resources. I consider it blood money. I consider it a monstrosity. You come to defend and say, no, you ain't bring a piece of paper. But that apart, I want to tell you that the schemes that they create in order for they themselves to acquire wealth, and then somehow they believe that they are so entitled and that we must not question. When we look at the classic example of the measure that was taken to have those persons who have decided to construct multi-level apartment family buildings, multi-level apartment buildings for families, put another way, and they said that once you do that, 25 years you have no tax to pay. 25 years, you have no tax to pay. And we have observed that not only Imsbert, also Rowley, several other of their colleagues, some we know, some we don't, have taken advantage of that. In other words, they know that or have created a scenario where they themselves, because each one of those apartments in Woodbrook and near Likoto in Tobago that Rowley is engaged in construction, whether he says his wife or him as the case may be, as we saw with the hospital in Tobago, stealing from the people of Tobago. That's why they hate him so. Over $1 million each one. I observed that there are two that is being constructed, one in Belmont and one in St. Anne's. We are looking at that right now because they are unfinished or they are almost finished. We are looking at where and who are the beneficiary owners of those entities. Because what they do, like Imsbert, and like, which is a glaring case, like Cummins, they look for peppercorn opportunities in strategic locations, small money, and purchase property like, of course, Al-Rari and his family. Buy property for small money in Port of Spain and elsewhere. And then build these buildings with clearly the guarantee that the state will rent them, or that these apartments will be sold to persons who are connected for $1 million costs or fees. And don't tell me you don't know anything about INS Gate. Don't tell me you don't know that. Don't tell me you don't know that in INS Gate you have, of course, the former governor of the central bank has one of the facilities there. Rowley has one. His daughter has one. And of course, the former speaker's husband has one as well. A cabal, a clique, utilizing state. And guess what? INS Gate was owned and or constructed by whom? The Warners, yes. Understand that devious and evil and wicked, conspirators, malicious, avarice, self-serving, artificial acquisition of riches because they were in government, utilizing state resources, state coffers in order to make themselves rich and then catapult themselves above the rest of us. While Lafayette, East Port of Spain, Betham Sealats, you have to know that. You have to know that. So just as I expect pretty soon, with the rolling out, in essence, of the present government's revitalization, massive, mega, and not so mega projects across the country, the UNC and its affiliates, and in this case, of course, in this iteration will be the coalition of interests, but prior to that would have been partnership. And we saw without any kind of what I consider to be disagreement, or any kind of ambiguity, or any kind of skepticism, then between 2010 and 2015, we saw that the UNC, and I say today the same, will be applicable, but from a huge, or should I say, a more expansive, a more monolithic perspective, when the UNC coming out of office was known across the corridor as the what? As the box drain government. Box drain government. That's a fundamental shift from the attitude and the conduct of the PNM. When they came out of office, they were called the pothole government. Pothole. Something you can't even associate with making a dollar. Can't even associate with making a dollar. Pothole government. As opposed to a box drain government. that meant that contracts were given to Tom, Dick, Harry in order, of course, to generate the paradigm shift that is required in order to what? To generate and to circulate the wealth of the country via the facilitation of the state and the treasury of the country. But to have a name as the box, as the pothole government shows that what is telling me that I go mash up my vehicle, yeah, that there is no opportunity to repair because these things are being manufactured as if it is on a what I consider to be an assembly line all over the place. But you have, of course, the revitalization initiative that I expect that the middle of this year will begin, of course, to materialize, and of course opportunities galore from Port of Spain, from Indigo Martin, of course, right up the corridor, and of course in other parts of the country. That is what we are talking about. That is what we are talking about. So there is chalk and cheese. Chalk and cheese. But I have put together, I have taken note of the press conference today, and I've taken note of Gonzalez's presentation, and I want to share that with you at this point in time. Let me just get it together.
The Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South.
Because it's very important.
And the Speaker of the House of Representatives called upon him to respond and explain why the debate should not be wrapped up under Section 52(1). And during the time that the member for Port of Spain South was on his legs, explaining to the Speaker of the House of Representatives as to why the debate should continue, and that why the motion moved by MP Rudal Munilal was an abuse of process and a stifling of the rights of the minority, the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain South was asked to take his seat, and the Speaker ruled that his discretion on this matter was very narrow and agreed to put the question on the House. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you that this was our scheduled Private Members' Day. And Private Members' Day are allowed in the standing orders of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago to allow the opposition, the minority in the Parliament, to debate matters of national importance. It ensures that the minority voices are not stifled and that we have balance in the way in which we conduct our parliamentary affairs, and that the executive does not always control the standing orders of the House of Representatives. What transpired when the Speaker basically agreed with the motion moved by the Member of Parliament for Oropouche was to undercut
my profuse apology for that. That is not the clip of today's press conference. But let me paraphrase, because it appears that I did put it on a flash drive and inserted it into the system, but apparently it was not recorded. It was not downloaded or uploaded, as the case may be. So I'll have to play that probably tomorrow. Sorry about that. I'm not seeing it on the system. Let me just check again to make sure. But that is an old press conference which I will have an opportunity to address. But I didn't want to deal with that tonight. I wanted to deal with, of course, another revelation that he made to, of course, reinforce what I've been saying. All right. All right, we don't have it. So I'll have to paraphrase. I'll have to explain. Well, what he said in essence in that press conference that he held, I think was either today or yesterday, is that he's calling for the resignation of the Minister of not Homeland Security, that is Roger Alexander, but the representative for Toko. Yes. Oh, sorry, for Sangre Grande. My mistake. Well, Toko Sangre Grande, yes. So Toko Sangre Grande. Wayne Sturge. He wants the resignation. And what for? Somehow he has made, and I like to use the word phantasmagorical nexus or connection between the murder of Guerra, the murder of one of his employees, I think yesterday, and I think the day before that, if not yesterday, the shooting of the son of Guerra. Not shooting of him, but shooting the home of his son. So I want to make it clear, he was not a victim, but no one was injured in that shooting spree. Shooting of the home of Guerra. And somehow, he is saying and making the phantasmagorical nexus. So he's painted a story I don't think not even Shakespeare could fabricate. Not even Shakespeare's very, very, what I consider be fertile mind to create scenarios, not the epic ones, because that is easy. If it's World War II and so on, at least you're able to coin and to fashion and to imagine, because it actually happened. But this Gonzalez fella, let me just put up his picture at least. Put up his picture. Yeah, let me put up his picture because I want to make sure we know what we're talking about. As I said, it is the wrong clips, so it makes no sense. It has no relation to what I want to talk about. Yeah. Calling for the resignation. He is calling for the resignation of Wayne Sturge. Yes. And he is saying that because he is the parliamentary representative, and during the course of the elections, same Guerra, who I referred to earlier and was murdered, they were dancing and he was part of the campaign, let me put it that way. And that some $20 million was invested by Guerra. For what? For the campaign. And somehow, Guerra's Sturge's life was in danger. Thus, the first state of emergency that was announced. And the second state of emergency was announced along the same line because the chicken is coming home to roost. But let's go straight, of course, to the calls. Sorry about that. Don't forget, of course, you can call 337-6940. Sorry about that. And we end at 9:30. A pleasant good night. Welcome.
A pleasant good night to you, Lennox Smith.
Yes, man.
Nice to see you back on the live. Nice to see you back in the land of the living.
Yes, man.
And everybody else on the chat who listening and who watching from near and far across the globe.
Yes, man.
Lennox,
Yes.
I just have a simple question to ask.
No problem.
I want to know when Marvin Gonzalez and the PNM opposite will be doing a news conference from behind prison walls. That is what I want to know.
Well, I think the answer is nestled in the inference you have to make when the Attorney General said that I am at war with you, and I don't know if he was one of the persons that he pointed to. So, and if it is that statement was made, I would have to assume that the matter is being not just considered, but is being pursued.
All right, Doctor, I'm listening.
All right then, my friend. Yes. All right, people. So I don't have a timeline, but the fact that the Attorney General of this country, who has a track record of a man of his word in matters of the nature that the caller indicated. And I want to say I am very, very conscious that the Attorney General has no jurisdiction where criminal matters are concerned, because I know that is where he is going, because he said behind bars. Civil matters, there's no bar, there is no cell, there is no jail. Civil matters. But the fact that the Attorney General has made it very clear in the Parliament, pointing at certain people in the Parliament, it means that he has information. So I'm sure that the matter, if it is of a criminal nature, will be passed on to the DPP, the office that holds the sole responsibility for criminal matters. And why I can say that with confidence? I said earlier, and it might be, the caller may have now joined us, so therefore it is very appropriate that he would have said, or asked the question at this juncture, because Warner is before the courts, the criminal courts, not civil, criminal courts, for what? For 16 counts, to answer 16 counts of money laundering. 16 counts. Apart from the charges already laid with respect to illegal quarrying. Yeah, illegal quarrying. And just in case to wind up the spurious and the self-serving and the ingratiation that Rowley would have enunciated when he went up to the school in Laventille and tell people that they should follow the example of the Warners and to see, of course, a black man making it in business, and everybody is looking, of course, to cry him down and to reduce his accomplishment. I wonder what he's saying today. And I wonder if that, more than anything else, was the reason why he came out to try to, of course, defend what I consider to be ill-gotten Balizé House. Ill-gotten resources of which Balizé House was constructed. I wonder. But I want to tell the Laventille people, even then, a person like me, and in future and now, anything they say, the PNM that is, you take it with not a pinch, not a spoon, not a bucket, but a truckload of salt, if not a whole beach full of salt. Because there he was, using and projecting that as an example of African success. African success. After, however, he told us on an emancipation morning, on Emancipation Day, he said he is disappointed with the Africans. He, Rowley, as Prime Minister. because they are at the lowest rung of the socio-economic ladder. Totally superficially oblivious. Let me repeat. Superficially meaning insincerely. Oblivious meaning that pretending that you know. To the fact that the PNM has projected itself as the African man party in this country, and more what I consider to be despicable that they have been in office longer than anybody else. So he didn't have to go up to Laventille and tell us, look at Warner as an exemplar, as a pattern. That should have been irrelevant, ocious. And not part of any discussion relating to business acumen and the African community engaging in business, because the time and the amount of opportunities that they would have gotten, the PNM that is, to be in office and claiming that they are African-oriented party, that he should be talking up there about how many more millionaires that are among the audience in that particular exercise of African heritage. That is what he should be talking. Not having artificially created a millionaire and discriminating against other Africans. So he's a selective African, selected for that purpose, and then telling us, look at he. A person, good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Good night.
Good night.
So, let me just make a small contribution here.
No problem.
So, don't expect any prosecution of PNM former ministers in this 5 years. It is the job of the police to prosecute, and UNC has won the election, and the position is the same. The police is a PNM party group and expect no prosecution. And I believe that the police is misleading the Prime Minister as it relates to information about this declaring a state of emergency. So as far as I see this state of
About the what? About the what?
this state of emergency.
Oh, state of emergency. Right. Go ahead. Yes.
Emergency, because she declared the state of emergency based on the advice.
Yes.
So what has happened? What I'm seeing is that the police buys but the police is not working. By and large, the police is not working. The whole of last year was a state of emergency, and the police did not come up in this area here. But if it's 10 times for the whole year, you see them come up. One of the main thing the police supposed to be doing is patrolling.
And where is that location you are referring to?
I am referring to Lasaiva.
Lasaiva. Okay, good.
Away from the fella who the police shot in Caroni.
Okay.
He was born up here.
All right.
But he was living up here, but his funeral took place up here.
Okay.
Right. And on that same road there was a murder. One person beat up another. And the police, I hold responsible for that death, because what happened there was people were selling alcohol there
Okay.
without any shop or anything like that. And people there got drunk and they beat up a fella got beaten and died. And if the police used to patrol, they would have seen that unlicensed place, you know, and people in that road have been complaining before that incident about what goes on there. The people drink rum and fight and things, and the police never come.
Right.
Police never come.
So you are skeptical that you're going to get a plethora or any kind of criminal action against former PNM operatives who would have done wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the police is a PNM party group.
Party group. I hear you, my friend. I hear you. I have something to say based on what you say there, so I'll wait until you finish.
Yeah. And I think the government looking for employing people and so on, they should look at the system of recruiting in the police service and promotion, because the same corrupt people will be in charge of promotion going on, and they will be promoting people who are corrupt just like themselves. And problem with the police, with the crime, the police must know what's going on in the country and they're not acting. So like people they want to people help. When people make a report, they are not helping, they're giving you information and you are not acting. Right? Another thing, so I said they need to change or look into system of promotion and recruitment.
Thank you very much. Marvelous contribution. I like that. Lasaiva.
I had 1 or 2 points there. Because I don't get in any morning, I send text and things.
Okay, very good, very good. Yeah, you had to do something. But of course, it's well noted here. And of course, I'll comment when you would have eventually completed.
Yeah. So like the government remove, I understand they would advise to remove the SSA from under Ministry of National Security or government. That is a wrong advice. And the next wrong advice the government got was to appoint a permanent commissioner of police. And this man is very young. He has plenty years ahead. If he's not performing satisfactory, you cannot move him. Right? And he will be retiring soon.
Yeah.
I feel that thing there, they're supposed to have somebody acting, and I would have leave Benjamin because for the election, the police was on the move. I saw plenty khaki people patrolling polling station and the area where election was taking place. So I thought he was working, Benjamin.
Yeah.
And he was this current commissioner. He wasn't a government nominee. He was nominated by a PNM police service.
Yeah, commission.
But what the government should be looking at the police for is tell us every week how many gangs you have closed down. Because they say there are 1,000 gangs or something in the country. Use it. And when anything happens, the ball and gang related, the police is saying gang related. So it means it means that you must be dismantling the gang, right? And every single member of a gang, you subject them to show your wealth. Every one of them. And we under a state of emergency, they could do that, right? So since time of Victor Mote, the police was asking for all kind of draconian powers. When the state of emergency is there, you have it. What are they doing about it? So I think the police the government supposed to be looking at the police, tell us how many gangs have you closed down. So for each division, they put them like 3 or 4 gangs a week. So by the time the state of emergency finish, many gangs have been closed down. And I noticed that the police is only concentrating on this St. Augustine area where I think they said the resistance gang is operating, but they are not looking at the areas where we have the multiple murders, like East Port of Space, St. Barb, Belmont, Lavante. We are not seeing that, and is when the government sees these 3 and 2 and 3 and 4 murders, they start to get frightened and want to declare a state of emergency. But the police is not working on another thing. I feel the police falsify their patrol record. Because they must have a system of showing the areas that they patrol, and somebody's supposed to be inspecting it and signing, but you are not seeing them inside. So when people complain, you just go on the main road and gallery. When the crime is festering and growing inside, germinating inside, away from the main road. And that is where you have to, the police supposed to be fighting. And the use of intelligence from the U.S., right?
From the where? From the?
U.S. involvement.
From the USA, okay.
Right? Must have, because I don't see, because this police, they proved themselves for 25 years to be either incapable of handling the situation or just incompetent. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
Right? They have all the powers with all the state of emergency, the state of emergency, and because the state of emergency provides more powers to you than the so bill, whatever they call it, right? So the only other thing I see that they have to apart from bringing have U.S. people advising or guiding the minister how they should go about it, and the minister in turn to the commissioner, right? Is some kind of private police force with the government has direction, because you can't tell it so that perhaps could be done by some legislation or using the regional corporation as it is, because they have police force and they could put that in their areas where they are in charge of the borough councils and the city council, whatever, the regional corporation. So that is my contribution.
Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you very, very, very much. I really appreciate that. I have very little to add, because the caller clearly is part of a growing consensus of citizens who are of the view that there must be a revamping of a nature where, one, accountability is manifested by way of measurement within a specific time frame, and nestled in a target approach. What do I mean? In terms of policing and the rolling out or the execution of their various performance. What the consensus is that there must be a limited time for the Commissioner of Police to achieve some very specific goals. And if those goals are not achieved, then the job of commissioner must be truncated or amputated or cut out. Let's get the next guy to do the job. And that must also be reflected in the various divisions, and therefore the divisional heads must also be made to account in a similar way. And maybe that might be the panacea or the formula to get the system working in such a way to the satisfactory of the population. I think that is what he said in essence. And it's not just here, but also on the ground report, you have seen people calling for time-specific periods, goal-specific, performance-specific, and therefore the accountability that we are looking for based on the goals that would have been set within the specific period, whether they are achieved or not, will determine whether the particular heads would roll or not. Yeah. There must be some mechanism to treat with that. Of course, we know to that. I have to be also looking at the other side that the various representative bodies of the police will resist. We know that there are people who will, of course, go to court to seek whatever redress because they might feel that that is unfair. But if you want to lead, then these are the parameters and these are the obligations to which, or the performance schedule, mechanism, targets that you must be responsible for. I have no difficulty with that because there must be something to make the system, meaning that the people in the system work much more fervently so to address the question of eliminating the fear of crime and criminality, and of course dousing the gang culture and those who are so engaged gangsters. There must be. But of course, I have said, as I said yesterday, it is not all of government. That is selling ourselves short. It is a all of society approach to this problem. All of society, of which the state or the government is one player, is one stakeholder in the plethora of interests. And last night, of course, I was at pains to say, and I did not get the chance this morning on the ground report to elaborate, but to look at the business, large business sector, as well as the financial sector. And it could be something as simple as adopting a community. I think we have a large cadre of businesses making enough money and profits. We just have to look at the profits declared by banks, for example, and these large companies, whether it's Angostura and Massey, etc. And I dare say in the oil, gas, and petrochemical area, that's a category by itself. But contributing to that basket of business entities that can make interventions on a timely basis, because we have concluded, and we must conclude, that this is a multifaceted, multidimensional problem that requires a multidimensional and multifaceted approach towards sustainable relief. Towards sustainable relief. And so far, none of the, what I consider to be the ingredients to achieve sustainable reduction and or relief has not been or have not been achieved. And so there must be a paradigm shift, utilizing and understanding all of the elements as aforementioned. Only way. I want to say that the major stakeholder is the community, where there is either the production by way of young people gravitating, or the criminal elements being embroiled in that kind of behavior, and the understanding of the dialectic that works, where people who have good intentions like myself are prepared, of course, to go toe-to-toe fearlessly and relentlessly, careful enough not to mash toes to the point where you could lose your life and limb, but commanding the respect of the very elements that the police are unable, of course, to generate the hard policing that is required for those elements, and therefore making it more difficult for people like myself to operate. But nonetheless, these communities must be the ones intrinsically involved in sustainable relief from the scourge that crime has brought to us. I'm getting a note here saying that it is now 9:36. Well, let me just conclude with Marvelous Gavin to say or something like that. They give him some effeminine annotation or connotation. But let me say that it is ridiculous that he can make the nexus between the minister, Sturge, and somehow, because the fella died, and all of the subsequent incidents, that Sturge is responsible. You see, I want to conclude by saying it was Rowley who said, as Prime Minister, because we have no other contemporary or recent exemplification to reference, so we have to talk about Rowley as Prime Minister. When the issue came up, that same issue came up, about some killings in Diego Martin, it was Rowley who said in non-certain terms that a constituency is made up of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and indifferent. That's what Rowley said. Gavin probably didn't know that because he was the man who Rowley bring in at the late half to deal with Wassa, because he don't know anything about Wassa and water, and had the temerity and made the asinine statement, as he did only recently, that he didn't know that when pipes are perforated, that the water cannot reach the upper end of the scale, or the transfer, the travel of the water within the pipeline. Duh. Gavin, you didn't know that if the pipes are perforated, that no matter how much pressure you put, the water would leak out? A simple thing like that? So come on. Stop making yourself a fool. It was Rowley who said that a constituency is made up of the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, and therefore the criminal elements will disguise themselves, come on a campaign and give of their service, of course, and every single one of them, I assume, this is Trinidad and Tobago, will have an expectation, the first of which, of course, wants to win the elections. The second thing, of course, is that if I made my contribution and I'm not working, for example, or I have a favor that I believe that you can, of course, satisfy that, and I'm close enough to the election campaign, what I can say, the management, then I'm sure I could find somebody to transfer to the victorious candidate, or the victorious candidate, and in this case that became a minister, I could convey my wishes to him. That is called political patronage, and is part and parcel of the whole process. I will never decry political patronage. What I decry, however, is political patronage at the expense of everybody else, which the PNM has practiced time and time, and especially under Rowley, you being part and parcel of that regime. Let us not waste time. So it is ridiculous. And of course, I'm sure that if I was Sturge, I wouldn't even dignify that by giving a response. Calling me to resign for what? All and sundry in a campaign will come on board. So if I should win East Port of Spain or Laventil West or Laventil East on the next occasion, and of course, the area is designated as what? A crime hotspot. You expect me to tell those who the police may know not to make a contribution? It's votes are looking for. And I want to say this, because of what he said, at that level of hypocrisy, we are going to investigate from the ground report and from, of course, the corridor, some of the elements that would have been part and parcel of his campaign. Because if his constituency covers parts of communities such as Maloney, La Hokata, Windy Hill, and so on, you're so damn stupid. You ain't know you're spitting in the sky and it go fall in your face. I'm sure if anybody make a diligent check or they communicate with anybody in that particular constituency that has an interest in the overall development and observation of campaigns, you would see that there would be elements of the type that he referred to. That's self-righteous indignation. Who the hell is you to tell anybody not to join a particular campaign? And how the hell the candidate could now be responsible for what has transpired now post the campaign, having won the elections? Have a wonderful rest of the night. God bless. And see you tomorrow night as we continue, of course, with these and other issues. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, the ground report. Andy, Mikey, and myself from 6 on Talk City 91.1. Talk City 91.1, yes. And pretty soon, we will be on TV3. The government has a television station that is not being used. We on the ground report have the creativity, have the tenacity, have the bold-facedness, and have the interest of the people to use all mechanisms for distribution of information that is at our disposal to share the information and to, more importantly, to get your responses. Have a wonderful rest of the night. Yes, indeed. Yes. So, people, we have come to the end, and that's it. You wanted to say something? Yeah? No, we closing off now? All right, come. I'm talking to Joshua there. I don't know where you come in at this late time and want to. He misses 5:30 session with the youths. Now he coming here now to say that he wants to put in a presence. I'd say good night and let's get out of here.
No, they wasn't here for half of the day.
I was here for half of the day.
They wasn't here for the half of the day. I know to start it, but I was just waiting for it to put on camera and thing.
All right, okay. Well, so it's my fault now.
Yes.
All right. I hear you. All right, my friend. Well, let's go to progress.
Mm-hmm. When I look around in the world, what do I see? I see footprints that man have left on the sand while walking through times. I see fruits of our ambition, figments of our imagination. And I ask myself, when will it end? When will it end? It is plain to see, universally this land is not bountiful as it was, simply because in his quest for success, nothing stands in man's way. All rivers run dry, soon the birds will fly, the mountains will be no longer high. And when I really think of it, I just wonder why, oh why. I see charity deplored, equal rights totally ignored, wisdom and ingenuity working in accord, simply to afford such inventions as thermonuclear warfare and environmental warfare. And I wonder now, where do we go from here? Prophets everywhere gaze upon the horizon and declare that judgment will come as the savage hands of unscrupulous men defile everything pass by. Time is running out as we eat and drink, species at the brink of being extinct. And I think no one can deny that the price of progress is